Hello and welcome to today's session, Mesh Email Security. I'm today's host. Thank you all for joining. All lines have been muted to reduce background noise. If you experience any technical difficulties, please let us know by using the chat panel below. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation and we will answer them during the last 10 to 15 minutes of today's session. After today's event, you will be receiving an email with the slides from today's presentation as well as the recording and some bonus content. At LBMC Technology Solutions, our aim is to be your team for everything tech. Please help me welcome our presenter for today's webinar, Gerald Tomerlin. Gerald is a network engineer and cybersecurity specialist at LBMC Technology Solutions, where he contributes to the design, implementation, support, and security IT infrastructure. With a strong background in network systems and cybersecurity, as well as a commitment to delivering reliable, secure technology solutions, Gerald plays a key role in supporting clients' evolving business needs. Now, Gerald, I'll turn it over to you.
Welcome this morning, everybody, and thank you very much. I hope to do a little bit of introduction to Mesh and the specific management features that happen in the background and some things that clients can do with Mesh. So I hope you find this enjoyable and informative. Please, any questions you have, feel free to stick them in the chat. First of all, Mesh Email Security, it's a solution that's a next generation solution that operates mostly in the cloud, uses artificial intelligence and behavioral analysis to better scan for spam and malicious software that are coming in. The first version of Mesh operates at the gateway level. It filters it before it ever gets in to your system. And then there's also another one, which we will talk about a little later, that we integrate directly with your Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. A few of the management components I want to show today with Mesh is the customer dashboard and live email tracker. Now, both of these will be available in either version, whether you have the cloud version or if you have the unified, what they market as unified, which actually drops an API and integrates directly with your M365 or your on-prem Exchange server. This is immediately when you log into Mesh, you'll see a page like this, which summarizes what is actually going on with your system. And it gives us certain information that can be toggled between the last 7 days of what's going on or the last 30 days. And it just gives a window of the types of email things that are coming into your system and a percentage of that type of for example, in here, we see that email that has come into this particular client, 346 emails were processed as a total, as 45% were processed. And of those, 164 were clean. So the emails that came in, 58% of them, 164 were clean. Non-clean, 183 with 35%. That means that they either had malware or phishing or something of that nature, and it actually blocked it and did not get into the system. And with that, we come to the first poll question.
Our first poll question is, what's your biggest email management challenge right now? Some of the options are spam and junk mail, user confusion with quarantines, too many support tickets, lack of visibility into filtering, or other. Looks like most results were user confusion and quarantines or lack of visibility into filtering. I think those were the top two.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for participating. From one of the things we discussed, we will get to users' confusion over quarantine, which is a popular one. But hopefully, with what we looked at with the overall dashboard, it gives you an idea of what it would be like to handle the visibility of your email and what's going on with it. Moving on to the live email tracker, this actually gives you a deep dive into individual emails that are actually coming into your system and how that Mesh is handling those emails. So to get there, we would just click the live email tracker. And as you can see, we have a sample here of all the emails and where they're from, the subject, verdicts, and statuses that Mesh have assigned to it, which we will get to in a few minutes. The live email tracker contains a searchable database. If you have a specific email you're looking for, or if you're looking for why it came in, you can go and look for it. It will give you a timestamp of when the email was accepted from, the verdicts. It actually gives you a way to manage your users from the view button there. The verdicts, as you can see, have when an email comes in, Mesh will determine what's going on with that email. It leverages artificial intelligence, which is a big marketing word today, but it's actually a very powerful engine in the background that can look at thousands of points of data on that email and compare it to not only other clean or dirty emails on the internet, but specifically clean and dirty email that have coming in for your organization specifically. So it can actually teach itself what a normal everyday email out of your system and into your system looks like and start training itself to help better identify what a spam may be or what a phish may be, or especially malware. The different verdicts, as you can see, is clean, which means it's looked at the email and decided that this is a perfectly good email and it is delivered. Spam gateways or email gateways have one type verdict for spam, and it just assigns it spam and treats it accordingly. Mesh, however, has three different types based upon the score that the email achieves as it's running through the engine. And that is spam likely, spam high, and spam definite. Those become a little more clear when we talk about how Mesh deals with these things. But in short, we can create rules and delivery systems inside Mesh that behave differently for each type of spam. We have a verdict of info mail. Mesh can identify a particular email as something that is advertising or marketing related, and it can assign it a verdict of info mail, which gives us the ability to assign rules to it. Then there are a couple of verdicts that Mesh has that we can't assign rules to because they're so dangerous and will automatically be quarantined and stopped. And that would be if there's an attachment that's been banned. The policy geo verdict is that if you have a list of countries that we have banned email from, any email from North Korea will be blocked and will have a verdict of policy geo. Any email that's coming in is it does its best to try to identify email that is working to present itself as somebody that it's not. This is common when phishing, as most of you all have probably read or have experienced yourself. It would be an example of, say, the CFO or an accounting manager, the email trying to impersonate themselves as one of those to a user and solicit them to do something such as create a bill or a check. It does its best to look at these emails and determine, is this really from the CFO or the accounting manager? It goes out, and if it sees any malware in the links or any malware attachments, it will block it. That's a first line of defense against viruses. If it identifies a phishing email, it blocks it as well. So it never even comes in to your system. And then we have the deliver statuses. As you can see, a regular green one means it's just come in. It's decided that it is fine and it's delivered. A delivered with a check mark means there is either an organizational wide or an individual's personal is set to allow that to deliver. There's a deliver with the extra I there that you can hover over and get more information on it. The deliver and banner is a type of status. If you have specific rules that you want specific emails to have banners added to them, that can be configured as well. And then, of course, we have the quarantine, and that would indicate any message or email that has actually been stopped and quarantined. We can assign email as junk, and those are different ways that we can take care of email and create rules to deal with those. Pending means the email is still trying to be delivered. That Mesh has actually got the email and it's trying to either send it onto your system or over to another system, and it just hasn't finished the process yet. Defer could indicate that there is a problem with delivery. So again, if a user says that they are looking for a email that they sent earlier today and they don't see it, or the destination user doesn't see it. Again, you can go into the live email tracker, go into the search, find that email, and most likely you'll see a defer to give you more information on why that email is being deferred. Now, this is actually a feature of the Unified product that actually integrates directly with your Exchange system, either on-prem or out in the cloud with M365. It also works with Google Workspace. And this allows us to remediate an email. So, for example, if an email comes in and it is scanned and it decided that it is quarantined or it has been delivered, that email could eventually, maybe one day, if it has a link on it, that it can, if an email has been quarantined, delivered to your users already, and in the future, there is a link or a file in that email that has become bad, and what may not have been bad at the beginning, but it is bad now, we could go in and remediate that email, and we'll find every instance and pull it out of everyone's mailbox so that it no longer exists in your Exchange system. We could also remediate any, say, inappropriate emails. If somebody was to send an email out and it is an inappropriate email and we don't want that on the system, we can find it and we can remediate it with Unified Mesh, and it pulls that out your Exchange system altogether. Deletes, these would be emails that were scanned and decided that didn't match any rules. It's not going to quarantine at all. It just completely deleted them. A lot of these will happen from bounces, rejects, deletes. These can be malformed emails that come in, emails that have come in that are on block lists out in the internet. Just basically, it can identify emails that are just no way ready to come into your system. It's not even malware. It's not going to be quarantined. It's just completely deleted. An example of what may be deleted is, as you can see, the delete with an X. So with your organizational rules that say block anything coming in, which would be deleted, individuals can create their own block lists. And as you can see, if you see the little X there, it means an email had come in and it matches somebody's block list, individual or organizational, and it was deleted. Also on the live email tracker, you have a view button. As you can see, we have a view button. And if we select the view button, it gives us a little more information on the email itself to allow you to make decisions on what to do with that email and or why that email was processed the way that it was. And this is what it would look like when you open the view button. And then you can go to the analysis tab and it gives information, some highly technical, some pretty straightforward, such as the country it was from, the size of the email, the header, the tos and the froms, the status, things of that nature. So from here, we can get to IP. We can completely evaluate what may be going on with it. Also, if we go in here, it can tell us if when we click onto this tab, it'll tell us why the rule was applied. So in this particular email, it was given the verdict of junk. This is the rule that was used to process that as junk, which was on block senders list in Office 365. And if you look up at the top, at the second line, you can see it gave it an info mail score, a content structural score, and it had some financial information that didn't look right. So it blocked that email. When you're looking and see an email that is quarantined, and we have a user asking you to look at it, you can come in here and it'll give you exactly why it is quarantined. In any quarantined email, you can hit the preview tab, actually read the email contents, and decide if it is a legitimate email that you want to allow. And with that, Lisa, we have a poll question 2.
Perfect. All right, let me pop those up for us. Question number 2 is, when was the last time you reviewed or updated your email filtering rules? We have a few options here. Within the last month, 1 to 3 months ago, over 6 months ago, or never. Looks like most folks say over 6 months ago.
Thank you, everybody, for responding to that. And that might have a direct reason for maybe you have not updated your rules. It's probably because it comes back to the confusion of managing your email filtering system, which strives to overcome through the live email tracker like we were just shown. Now, at the bottom, when we go to an email and we view an email, there are all buttons that allow you to manage that email if you decide you want to deliver it or delete it. And you can also create an allow rule right out of Live Email Tracker for the recipient or the organization, or you can decide to create a block rule for that recipient or the organization. As you can see here, here is the email analysis screen again. And at the bottom, if you want to deliver this email, you can deliver this particular email once. You can deliver and allow the sender for the recipient or for your whole organization. This allows you to manage their quarantine if there's any question about an email that needs to be looked at. They are able to do similar things with their own quarantine, which we will look at in a few minutes. But this allows you as an administrator to go in to see what's going on, if anything is being blocked that shouldn't be blocked, or if there is a question about an email. And by contrast, we have the exact same thing with delete, which means you can delete and then block the sender for the recipient, or you can block the sender for the organization. And that, again, updates and creates ongoing rules if you choose to do those for your system. Managing users can be done from here as well. There's a couple of powerful tools that you have for your users that you're able to use. One of the things that you can do is reset passwords for users who can't log into their live quarantine. Again, in a few minutes, I'll show you an example of what a quarantine email looks like for your users. An option for them to log in and view their quarantine. And what that will present them is almost exactly like the live email tracker we looked at before, but it will only be the emails that are to and from that particular individual. And they will have the view button and be able to manage their own rules, just as we looked at a minute ago as an administrator. And there are also certain users that we can set as IPs. Here's how you reset your passwords. You would just go to a user, select the edit button, and there at the bottom, as you can see, you just select email the password link and reset the password. They'll get an email to reset their password. VIP users, this helps the system further protect you from impersonation attacks. Mesh works to try to determine if a particular email is actually coming from a particular person. There are actually people in your organization that you can identify today that you would want extra protection. And that protection, it could be the president of a company, a CFO, an owner, a very high value person in your company. You would want to have extra protection and have Mesh spend a little extra time building up a profile to allow it to scan even further to protect your organization from email that is trying to pretend to be one of these VIPs. And to do that, you would go into the edit users thing that we saw a minute ago. As you can see, it's the same screen. Here's where the email password, at the bottom, you see the email password link. And you would just select that checkbox there that says VIP. And that will tell Mesh and let Mesh know, hey, this particular user is very important. And poll question number 3.
So the third question is, why would you consider switching from Mesh Gateway to Mesh Unified? We have a few options here, and I will give folks a few more seconds to respond. Cost savings, better control and visibility, reduce support load, or not considering a switch. And it looks like most people answered better control and visibility, or they are not considering a switch at this time.
All the things that we talked about earlier, with the exception of the remediate button, are actually features of the Mesh Gateway product. And the Mesh Gateway product sits out in the cloud and will scan all emails before it ever touches your email system. The unified product does all the same things that the gateway does. So it will scan email before it ever gets to your system, but it gives you, through the process of directly integrating with Exchange, it gives you a little more powerful features. Some of those features are the ability to remediate, which we discussed earlier, where you can go in, you can find an email that you want to remove from the system. Today, without this process, it's almost impossible to tell, which mailbox got which email and determine where to remove these emails from. But with Mesh Unified, you can simply go into that live email tracker, select one of the emails and hit remediate, and it pulls it out. It also gives us the ability to fine-tune policies. There are ways to create policies for different levels of spam or info mail or other verdicts. So instead of just block or clear, we can do other things. One of the more popular things to do with Mesh Unified that you cannot do with Mesh Gateway is we can direct certain types of verdicts straight to the user's Outlook junk folder. So it's never quarantined. So say, for example, you would want all info mail. Anything that's tagged as info mail, you don't want to quarantine it. We can have a rule that says when you identify anything that's info mail, send it to the user's junk email box in Outlook. That's a powerful tool that Unified brings to the table. Some other things that we can do that are not commonly addressable by you as a client, but are accessible by us, I kind of want to show them a little bit so you can see how some of the things I've talked about work. And that would include policy customizations and that quarantine digest customization. We'll spend a little time on it because I know one of the poll questions answers was that there are continuing confusion with quarantine digest. So a policy will tell us what will happen to any email of any particular given verdict, such as attachment banning and other items that increase the zero trust features of Mesh, which means that we can look at any of those emails and say, please look for this, and then do that. We can block countries, attachment bannings, any particular words or phrases that seem suspicious. We can control those and determine what happens to them. And this is a screen to show us where we do this. This particular policy applies to this organization. And you can see our email verdicts there on the bottom left. And then we have an action next to them. So you can see that any email that is given a verdict of clean, it is delivered. Anything that gets the verdict of impersonation, it is quarantined. And here is an example of where if an email is given the verdict of info mail, we're sending it to the user's junk box in their Outlook. And these are completely customizable. We can change them depending on the need of your organization. This is another part of that policy. We're continuing to build a policy out. These are the attachments we can tell that we don't want to allow in. As you can see, the geo filter there is a list of all the countries we block. So this particular organization would not be getting any email that is sourced from Afghanistan. It would be blocked at the gateway and would never come in. Zero Trust increases Mesh's ability to apply its machine learning. And Zero Trust is another one of the industry buzzwords that basically means that it's default to not trust anybody or anything. And it will say, for example, if we turn cold outreach in, it will look and say, if so-and-so sent you an email, it would look and say, somebody's never sent that email to this person before, then it is executing, quote, zero trust. It says, I don't trust that, and we quarantine it. You turn these on for an even more powerful type of settings for Mesh. And here's what I want to spend just a little bit of time on is the Quarantine Digest email. Quarantines are a little confusing sometimes. What will happen with Mesh, as with most others, is that your users will get a daily email of their digest, which looks just like this. And that can be completely configured when you want it to go out, how many times you want it to go out, configurable by your organization. And the first part of that gives a stats breakdown for the particular individual. So in the last 30 days, the users had 61 threats stopped, 236 spams identified, and some policy things that were blocked, and 16 safe emails that have come in. Underneath that, you'll see any new quarantined email. This particular user has one email in quarantine. They get a quick preview of what that email is. They can select the preview button and it will give them a web-based version to read before it's actually delivered. They can select deliver, and which will of course release the email to the user. And they can select delete, which will block it. Again, with the deliver and delete options, they will have the options as you did as an administrator to create a rule to allow them in the future or to deny them in the future from getting to their mailbox. The two options in the bottom are pretty powerful for Mesh and are pretty cool. One, the manage your quarantine. That's the place where people can log in. The users can sign into Mesh and see their own quarantine, their own live email tracker, and see everything that's going on for a given day. So if, for example, your quarantine digest executes every workday at 8 o'clock in the morning, but you have a user who is suspicious that they're not getting an email, and it's 11 o'clock that morning, it's probably not going to be a good business process to wait until 8 o'clock the next morning to determine whether or not that email has been quarantined. So they can log in and find that email. Again, they can do a search, and for the most part, it'll be right there that they can find that email and then apply whatever action they want. If they don't want to log in and manage their live email tracker and live quarantine, which probably most people won't, users, they can request a digest on demand. Anytime during the day, they can actually select that and it will send them a current state and quarantine digest and allow them to see if anything was blocked. You will see in some of the quarantine digests, if there is a malware that comes through, a geo block that comes through, or a phishing that comes through, they will be quarantined and stopped, but the user will not have the ability to deliver to themselves. For that reason, they would have to make a request to say, I have an email that is quarantined. I need somebody to look at it. The email request is sent out, and an administrator can take a look at that email and determine if that email is a legitimate, whether that email is safe, and whether that email is okay to release. Those are the three verdicts that a user cannot control from their quarantine digest. Now, the quarantine digest itself, this is where it is actually figured. And as you can see here, this applies to everybody. We can set quarantine digest, and we can actually set policy rules that I mentioned earlier. Some of the rules we were talking about, manage different emails. We can have a different quarantine digest for C-level folks, different rules for the president, or different rules for accounts payable or accounts receivable. They can all be changed, the rules and this quarantine digest. And this is applied to the entire organization, and the quarantine digest is sent out every workday at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is completely configurable by your organization. We can send it out multiple times a day or certain days of the week. Here, when someone clicks on that, if they don't have the ability to release an email, such as I was talking about earlier as malware or a geo-block or anything of that nature, when they click on that request to release, the email that we set in here is the person or entity that will get that request to process. That can be us here at LBMC or any designated in a particular organization to manage those. We are done, and I hope this has been informative, and I hope you have a lot of questions that we can answer for you. So Alyssa,
All
I'll turn it
right.
back over to you.
Thank you, Gerald. Okay, so we'll be beginning our Q&A live. If anyone has further questions about anything that Gerald shared, but we don't get to your question today, please feel free to reach out to us at info@lbmctech.com. Gerald, I do have a few questions that have come in. The first question is, who in your organization is most impacted by poor email filtering? End users, IT, or leadership?
That is actually a good question. Say that would depend on the type of email filtering. For the most part, when you're looking at your C-level, your executives and managements, they are mostly impacted by spam, and they don't want to see a lot of stuff in their inbox. They don't have the time to deal with it. They want it to be as efficient as possible. So I would say in that instance, it would be the managers. But where we're really seeing a lot of the potential dangers with email is with our end users. That is where a lot of the phishing emails are directed to. They will come into the users, and a lot of you probably know what a phishing email is, and they're targeted. So I would have to say that question depends on the type of email that comes in, whether it's a targeted email to a specific manager, which that's a completely different case, or whether it's a blast out to your users.
And can you speak to a little bit of why that is true for the answer that you just gave, as far as why they would be most impacted by poor email filtering?
Well, for example, with a CEO with poor email filtering, if we're not filtering out their spam, then what you would normally see is a high percentage of the emails that are coming in are spam or don't need to get through in any way. As you know, as much as 30 to 60%, 70% of emails. So if a C-level or a manager is getting 100 emails a day and only 20 of them are emails he needs to look at and 80 of them are spam, that saves him a lot of time from having to go through 80 emails just to determine that those aren't emails he needs to look at, and it takes a lot of his time up. So having those blocked at the gateway before it ever gets to his box allows him to spend his time more efficiently than to deal with spam. And that also applies to end users as well. But C-level people are really particular about their time. They usually have everything booked up all day, and it really impacts them. One of the instances that can impact a manager is a targeted phishing email that comes through. If it is not filtered out, attackers actually go on LinkedIn and find out who is who in a particular organization and try to formulate emails that particularly target those. So if we have a CFO in an organization and they are specifically targeted as a phish attack, and the impact could be a whole lot greater than if they attack me. A CFO has the ability to write checks or be tricked into false billing, whereas it does affect me. I can't do as much damage to the company directly as a C-level. When it comes to end users, they are also busy. If they have 100 emails coming in and we don't filter out those 80 emails that they don't need to look at, it takes up their time as well. And most phishing attacks don't target an individual, they target just anybody. Filtering those out before they ever get to your inbox is a first line of defense to protect ourselves from things like ransomware.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gerald. We do have a couple more questions, and if we don't get to all of them, please know that we'll be addressing those in a separate email. You have the opportunity to reach out to us at info@lbmctech.com. There will be a recording of today's session sent to everyone here today for you to kind of go back over, and then if you think of new questions, we'd love to keep the conversation going. So Gerald, the next question is, where do you see the biggest opportunity to empower users in managing their own email security?
That is a great question. And I believe users being able to go into that live email tracker and manage their own quarantine gives them a far better view of what's going on with their email rather than just getting that report. So the biggest opportunity would be allowing users to see every piece of email coming to them. They can determine exactly how they want those emails treated, which is a huge upgrade over just being able to say, add this person to a block list, add this company to an allow list of that nature, which was fine in the past. But the opportunity is for the user to actually see how all their email is being treated.
Okay, so another question is, when implementing new email tools or settings, how do you ensure user adoption and understanding?
If we were to put in a mesh thing, we would work with the organization. We would communicate exactly what's going to happen. We would get their input to find out if any of the things that are going to happen would impact any type of business processes. And that way we can identify those and ensure that they are not interrupted. If we have to do it during non-business hours, we can do it. Or if it's just a particular feature that will always be a detriment to business processes, we can identify ways to implement it that it wouldn't do that. As far as training goes, any delegate of an organization that needs to go in and be an administrator for Mesh will have one-on-one training with that person. So if a particular organization has two people they want to assign as Mesh administrators, we would set up a time with them and spend probably about an hour going through and showing them how to do the email tracker, how to release emails, what the different verdicts are. A little bit of what we showed today with more detail. With users, we usually provide a quick sheet, for example, a PDF that has instructions and screenshots of what your quarantine does and how to manage it. We usually get that to the organization so they can distribute that to their users. The key component there is there's no implementation without communication with the organization's contact.
Very good point. Yes, and I like that you pointed out that there would be the one-on-one training. I think that is a key point also. So maybe just time for another couple of questions. Another question is, how do you currently measure the effectiveness of your email security setup, and what would you like to improve?
The effectiveness of the security setup, we look at basically the only thing that we can look at is the metrics that are available to us from the system itself. We can see how many emails have come through and how they are handled. The more emails that get through that are not spam, the better we consider the email filter to be. Or another key component is how many emails being blocked that shouldn't. So that is the measure of how we do that. The way that Mesh does it, at first can be a little challenging as the machine learning learns what's going on with an organization, but we can see what's going on and see as it's learning to make sure that the emails that are being scanned are actually the ones that the users want. There are times when Mesh gets in the way, as any email filter would, and we have to configure that and make sure that doesn't happen again. But the only real way to measure effectiveness is going to be the metrics that are on the live email tracker and the organization users themselves seeing better improvement or if they're frustrated with what's going on. So those are really the only things that we can directly measure as far as the effectiveness of Mesh.
Okay. This last question is, why do you think email security is still a top issue even with modern tools like Mesh?
Email security is a good one. The fastest growing segment of cybersecurity attacks today by a vast majority, 75, 80%, are through phishing emails, which are emails that come through that try to use social engineering tactics to get people to click on things that they shouldn't be clicking on. That is by far the biggest types of attacks that are out there. It is no longer the mad teenager in a hoodie sitting in his basement trying to break into a firewall and get into your network. So that would indicate that the most important thing to protect your organization is at the email level, filtering those types of emails out before they ever get into your system. Having your users trained to identify suspicious email and to know when an email is coming in and is trying to get them to do something they shouldn't is a top priority as well. The bottom line is the users themselves are the first line of defense in any organization, really. We can have all the tools in place, all the firewalls in place that we want. And if a user is tricked into doing something unwittingly, there's nothing that can be done about it at that time other than respond to whatever happened. Even though we have a lot of tools in place today, email is still the biggest attack vector of cyber criminals, and it keeps growing. I was just reading today, I believe 80% or higher are phish attacks, and they're getting better at creating these phish attacks, disguising them using artificial intelligence. The biggest targets are small to medium businesses. Almost 90% of all phish attacks go to small and medium-sized businesses, people less than 1,000 people, which is contrary to what a lot of people think sometimes. They think that the big targets like hospitals and banks and insurance companies and that nature are targeted more. But attackers are learning that those types of entities have huge budgets to protect themselves from attack. The small and medium-sized companies don't necessarily have that type of budget or expertise sometimes, and email is a very easy way for them to get into the system and have something unwittingly executed.
So true, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. I do kind of wish that we'd have brought that up in one of the first questions so that they could hear that response, because that is so important to emphasize for SMBs now. Well, we hope this webinar on mesh email security has been informative and valuable to everyone who joined us. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. On October 8th, we'll have Navigating You Secure, our cybersecurity awareness tool partner. More details coming to your inbox and our LinkedIn events page soon. If you have any further questions or need guidance on how to get started, our team is always available to support and assist you.